Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds, to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between, too. Today's video, though, it's yet again another horror-themed video. I'm sorry, guys, but it's spooky season, and we might as well, fit in as much thematic content in a small amount of time as we can. Plus, I talk horror all year round, so it's not that unusual that I'm releasing horror video after horror video. It is the way it is. I'm very excited about today's video, though, because it's a good discussion, and it's a discussion that I actually already had up on my YouTube channel. However, the audio was out of sync, and it was really bothering me, so I have re-edited it, I have fixed the audio, I've also trimmed it down. So essentially, what I'm talking about is, if you guys are longtime viewers of me, then you might know, and if you're new, then you might not know, but and by the way, if you are new, thank you so much for subscribing and for checking out the channel. It means so much to me. But what you might not know is that I love Halloween time, and every year I have a massive horror movie marathon. And so this year I had to scale it down because I wanted to read more. And the reading's going fairly well, by the way. I'm really happy with my reading. I'm behind on my movie watching, and I gotta say, I'm not as pleased with my movies this year as I was last year. And that brings me to today's video. So today's video is from last year. And it's about my marathon, also from last year. So last year, I was able somehow, some way, to watch 65 movies. And every year I start on, every year starting last year. Before that, I would only watch my movies in October. But starting last year, I started on the first day of fall and watched all the way through October 31st. So, Halloween. And so in that time frame last year, I watched 65 movies. And that's not even counting how many television show episodes I watched, because I also watched thematic TV shows too, to go, with the season. So this year, I scaled it down to 31. It's going okay, but I don't know. I had some gems last year. And so this video, I wanted to re-upload it, where it's now, fixed and nice. And I don't think a lot of people have seen it, even when it was up with the bad audio, just because it didn't get a lot of views. I know that the view count's kind of low. So I thought people might not know it's on my channel, so why don't I fix it and get it back up here. So after this intro, you'll see me talk a little bit about all the movies I watched. Well, not all of them. I mentioned a lot of the movies I watched that I didn't mention in a chat I had with my friend Kat. So after Halloween was over, my friend Kat and I, we had a big, huge, long chat. And it was a lot of fun, actually. It was over Zoom, and I recorded it. And we talked about not only all of our movies that we watched, but we also discussed some of the stories we read. And we also talked about, some of the other things we did, like baking and other things like that. Anything that was thematic to the season. And so, if you want to check out that chat, I will link it above because I'm very proud of it. I think we touched on a lot of things in that chat, and I talk about a lot of movies. But there are a few movies from my list. When you have 65 movies you watch, there are inevitably movies that I wouldn't be able to discuss with her because we only had so much time, and the chat was long as it was. But I had to find another time to talk about the movies I didn't get to talk about with Kat. So here is the chat about the movies I didn't get to discuss with her. I hope you enjoy it because I really am proud of this chat. I think it's got a lot of good info, a lot of good discussion, and it was live streamed on Twitch back in 2020. I think it was like November or December of last year. So hopefully you guys enjoy it, and it'll be like a flashback. So after this intro, you'll see me from 2020. So it's like we're doing a time warp. Let's do the time warp again. After this. Bye. Dun, 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 dun. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Alright, so as you guys know, I love Halloween time. And this past Halloween, you've heard me talk about how I did a whole marathon of different horror movies. Well, my original goal was to watch 50 movies, and I had this long chat with Kat, and we talked about how we both had 2 marathons, one each, that we did during Halloween time. If you want to hear about all the details of our marathon and the movies we had in common, go to my YouTube channel and you could find our chat there. I really encourage you to watch it and listen to it because it's a lot of fun. And we go into a lot of different things and different movies than I'll be discussing today. The purpose of today is I'm going to talk about movies that I didn't get to talk about with Kat. So out of the 65 movies, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of stats about the type of movies I watched over Halloween time. So 19 of the horror movies I watched out of 65 were rewatches for me. That means the rest of the movies, 47 total, rest of the movies I didn't see before. 2 of the films out of the 65 were documentaries. 6 of the films from my list were released in the 70s or earlier. 22 films were released in the 80s. 6 films were released in the 90s, which is funny. You guys know how much I love the 90s, and yet only 6 films on my list this past year came from the 90s. And then 31 horror movies from my list were released between the years of 2000 and this year. So we're going to talk about a couple that stuck out through all the different decades, and I'm really excited about this chat because I took notes during these movies. Quite a few of them. I mean, I've got the notes here. I took notes while watching it, and some I didn't take as details of notes. Others, I took a lot of notes. So I was like, I can't let this go to waste. I have to use my notes. I have to. Some of these movies are more thematic than horror movies. Like, I'm going to have a segment of what we're talking about today is movies that I watched this past year that were the most thematic or most halloweeny, you could say. So movies that have like a real autumn feel or a real Halloween look. It doesn't even have to be a part of the plot really, but it has to have like a feel or a look. So I've got 3 movies that fit that bill, and we'll get there in a few minutes. But yeah, very excited about all this. Let's get to my first little movie I'm going to discuss, and I think this one is kind of a lesser known gem. That's why I want to point it out, because not a lot of people have heard of it. So let's get to the movies. Alright, this first movie I want to highlight here is called Clown House. Now, everyone knows about Pennywise the Clown in the movie It, and whether you like the Tim Curry version or the new version with Bill Skarsgård, that's of course all up to you, a personal preference. Just to give you a little spoiler, I prefer the Tim Curry version, even though I did enjoy the It remakes a lot. I thought they were well done for the most part. But yes, I think those, when you think about clowns and horror movies, I feel like It is the thing that jumps to the forefront right away. But I discovered this gem, and of course, I've got to attribute it to this book. This is my go-to book, and I'll show you guys when I come back on camera. Pumpkin Cinema by Nathaniel Toll, and I will be talking with him in a future stream. I'm very excited about it. He is like a Halloween and horror master. He watched like horror movies to write this book. He watched like hundreds upon hundreds for like a really long time, more than a year's length of time, to pick out which movies for his book would be best to include. So I'm so glad I found this. It's in his book, and it's really creepy. So it's these guys who escape from a mental asylum, and they basically go to a carnival and finagle their way into the clown tent and kind of do something bad to the real clowns and dress up like clowns. And then there's this kid who's at the carnival who's super scared of clowns, and they end up following this kid home and his family, and all kinds of craziness and creepiness ensues. I really like this movie. I gotta say, it's underrated. It is a little campy and cheesy. It's kind of lower budget, but it's got like that eerie vibe about it where it's not even trying too hard. I mean, look at that guy that you see on your screen in the clown makeup. There's 3 evil clowns or evil psych patients dressed as clowns in this movie, and this is the main one on your screen right now, and he's also the one featured on the cover. But look how creepy he is without hardly even trying. It's just the makeup, the way it's on his face, and also like the type of wig he's wearing. I think it's perfect, and it's really, really, really disturbing. And this director of Clown House also directed, I think he directed Jeepers Creepers. Let's see what Nathaniel has to say about this, because he wrote about it, like I said, in his book. And I will kind of reference this book because basically, I look through his book, and if I like what he has to say about the movie, I might write it down for that year's marathon, and that's what I did with Clown House. I actually had to replace one of the movies on my list because I couldn't find it to stream. So I was looking through his book for a last-minute replacement, and this was it. Now, it is hard to find. You can't basically find it to rent online, so I bought the DVD. It was super cheap on Amazon, and I thought it was worth it. I'll watch it in the future. Not next year, but, you know, down the road for sure. So the synopsis, as written by Nathaniel Toll: 3 escaped mental patients murder the clowns from a traveling circus, then take their identities. Afterwards, they visit a large house where 3 brothers are home alone, the youngest of whom has a severe clown phobia. So pretty cool. And again, it just got a strong start to the movie. It's got a lot of like a good 80s vibe to it. I like it a lot. It was released in 1989, so just at the end of the decade there. The cool thing about Nathaniel's book, Pumpkin Cinema, is that he writes not just like a little blurb, he writes a whole thing. He gives you all this information about the cast, the length, the director, the rating, the year, the synopsis, but then he writes why he included it in his book and how it meets his criteria for basically being thematic for Halloween time. So yeah, it is an underrated clown film, and I'd check it out if you like clown films and if they creep you out. Let's see what the chat has to say. Clowns are creepy, says Kat. And yes, gosh. Mag says Tim Curry was the best Pennywise. You know it. That's my boy right there. And my Pennywise clown shoes, I've got them nearby. I'm going to go grab my shoes. Wait till y'all see these shoes. So you could see them easier. So there's Tim Curry as Pennywise on my flippin' shoes. And the other shoe says, we all float down here with balloons. Come on, guys. That's badass. It's awesome. I really love those shoes. So yeah, I've shared pictures of them before, but they're pretty much one of my favorite shoes, and they're comfortable. Good Guy Dave says he really liked the new Pennywise. Of course, that was played by Bill Skarsgård. I do think it was well done. And like the scares, the first time you see the new It, I think it has some good jump scares that really got me. And I'm glad they didn't give them all away in the trailer, because I've told people this, like my friend Kat, and I've written about it in my blog, and I've told my dad this. You can't watch horror movie trailers today, because they'll just give away everything about the movie, which I hate. Why do they do that? Why even go see the movie if every jump scare, and I have a good memory, so like I'll remember the trailer. So like if a scene's coming up where there's a jump scare, it was shown in the trailer, I will remember the trailer. And I'll be like, it's coming right up. Gosh darn. Let's see what Nails has to say about Tim Curry. She says, Tim Curry is iconic as Pennywise, but man, when the new Pennywise first appeared on my TV, when I watched it, I launched my phone across the room in fright because he scared me so much. There's something about how I feel like, so Tim Curry's version of Pennywise, I feel like looks more, like real, like a guy in clown makeup. A really, like, creepy guy in clown makeup. But also there's something otherworldly about him. Whereas Bill Skarsgård in the new Pennywise, I feel like that, he almost looks like a living doll of a clown. Like a living, that you could manipulate. And you could see that in his like really cartoony actions, his cartoony face, his cartoony smile. He doesn't just seem like a guy in a clown outfit. He seems like a life-size clown doll, in my opinion. Nails also says, one of the scariest clowns she can remember from childhood is the clown doll from Poltergeist. Yes, that is also creepy. So a lot of people will think of the Poltergeist doll when they think of clowns as well. And she also says, Nails says, I can't believe clowns are supposed to be a fun thing for kids. Like, I know, I've never enjoyed clowns. And in fact, I saw it when I was, like, pretty young. Like, probably before 13, I would have to guess. And yeah, that used to freak me out. It was probably one of my first favorite scary movies, but at first I could hardly watch it. I would, the original made-for-TV movie, It, is a little corny, but I think it's wonderful nonetheless, so that's just me. But great clown movie. But again, check out Clown House for a new good, not new, it's not new, but for one that you probably haven't seen before. So to you, it probably would be new. Because I never heard about it until, like I said, this is like my Halloween Bible right here. Pumpkin Cinema, the best movies for Halloween. And Kat says, speaking of Kat, she says she thinks both versions of Pennywise are disturbing. Yeah, it's just like clowns. And also the story of It, I think, is pretty effective at scaring people. Just the idea of it and how it could be anything that truly scares you, and it can almost like morph and take different iterations. It could take different forms. It's creepy, very creepy. Nail says she's making a Kelsi says watch list, so like things I say to watch. I definitely say Clown House, yes, for sure. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Again, hard to find though. So if you can't watch it, no biggie, because again, I went kind of all out and bought the DVD, which it was cheap, but most people wouldn't just go buy a DVD in these days. I still have my DVD player and use it quite a bit, so not a lot of people do anymore. Alright, now we're going to the movies that grossed me out the most. These two films I watched this past October as part of my marathon. The first one, I guess you pronounce it Dagon. It's an H.P. Lovecraft story, and that was kind of like a theme on a lot of my movies on this year's marathon list, and I didn't mean to do that. This is another find that I found through Nathaniel's Pumpkin Cinema book, and it was creepy. I will say it wasn't totally Halloween feeling, because it took place in a town where it was like, tons of water dripping everywhere. Lots about water, obviously. And it was super creepy. The reason why I say it's the grossest, I mean, in a way it's a spoiler, but not really. I mean, because it's not like I'm showing it to you. It's not like it's a big surprise, and I'm not telling you who this happens to, but some guy literally gets his face cut off. You guys don't even know. So I said the other day on my stream when I was promoting this talk about horror movies that one of the films I watched grossed me out so much where I got like hot and sweaty and like I felt like I was overheating and I got uncomfortable, like I couldn't look. That was this movie. And yes, it is creepy. It's definitely well done. It's disturbing. I'd recommend it for sure if you really want to be to the point, like messed up to the point where you almost are going to throw up. Because the whole face thing looked real, and I was like, how could this be? So yeah, that was one of the movies that grossed me out the most. And then the other movie that grossed me out was Dead Kids. It's actually also called Strange Behavior. So it's got two different names, and some movies, for some reason, it could be because of the region, different names in different regions, but I don't know why this one had two different names, but again, you could find it either way. I saw both posters, and I'll show you the other poster in a second, but yeah, Dead Kids, as you can see on your screen right now, you see that needle and that eye? Okay, yeah, so a needle goes in an eye, and I wear contact lenses, so I touch my eye to put my contacts in. And even though I do that, this scene with a needle in the eye still disturbed me, and things with eyes in general disturb me, which is, like I said, ironic, because sometimes I put my contacts in, I touch my eye. And in fact, when I first learned I needed glasses, I was like, I'll never get contacts. Then when I first tried to get contacts, the first time I put them in, I nearly cried. I'm like, I can't touch my eye. I'll just never be able to do that. Like, ever. Kat says, Michelle's husband, Richard, our good friend Michelle, and her husband, Richard, oh man, Richard and Michelle are amazing. Anyway, Richard, would faint if he saw images with the needle going into the eyeball. Richard hates eyeballs, by the way, guys. So, for my Halloween party at my house that my family throws every year, we invited Kat and her husband, Barry, and we also invited Michelle and her husband, Richard. Well, we had a whole eyeball-themed bathroom, and I think Richard was there that year, because I know some years Richard couldn't come. But, oh my god, yeah. Richard doesn't like eyeballs, so I don't think he went into the bathroom, or if he did, I don't think he liked it. Or maybe he wasn't there that year, but all I know is he doesn't like eyeballs, and he's super squeamish when it comes to that, for sure. And I do remember that. I'm so glad Kat brought that up, because I totally forgot that he, even more than me, he just can't stand eyeballs, and he would probably faint at this image that you guys are seeing on your screen with the eye and the needle. Oh my god, no. Nail says she's more into jump scares than gore. Then don't check out that H.P. Lovecraft-based movie. I'm gonna always say it wrong, I'm sure. Dagon? Whatever. I know it's a well-known story. Like, Kelsi, pronounce stuff. Come on. It's ridiculous. So let's go look at another poster of Dead Kids, aka Strange Behavior. As you can see, you see her holding the needle. You see the main character, the young teenager, laying back. Yeah, so creepy. And as you can see, there's the other poster where it says strange, strange, strange. You can't see, but it lightly says behavior underneath. So yeah, weird movie, not the best movie, but there's a great Halloween dance party scene. It might not even be like actual Halloween, but the kids are dressed up in costumes, and they're dancing to this great, I don't know if it's 50s song, but let me look it up real quick. The main chorus is like, lightning striking again. That's terrible, I can't sing. Lightning striking again. Let's see who sings this. It's such a flippin' groovy song. I like it a lot. Apparently, it's by Lou Christie. And yeah, it's called Lightning Strikes, and lightning doesn't have the G on the end. It has like an N and an apostrophe. So it's such a fun scene in this movie, Strange Behavior. They're all dancing and in costume, and they're doing like a choreographed dance, all the kids. I really like it. So it has that 80s cheese that I love. But also, hey, I like the song so much I added it to my Spotify list, so there you go. I was really pumped up about that song. I was like dancing to it the other day on the elliptical. Not really dancing, just kind of bobbing. I don't really dance, so whatever. Semi-dancing, I guess you could say. Nails loves when I sing. I think you're the only one, because it's so bad. But I like how bad it is. It is kind of fun to sing badly sometimes. Alright, so let's go to my next movie I want to feature. And this one I already knew about. This is one of my rewatches. And I really like it a lot, and I give it full 100% praise. And I'm going to highlight it because a lot of people don't know about it. It's a lesser known film for sure, and I just don't think it gets enough love. And the cover, or the poster, will show you that it's got some very unique kills, and I think that's the best part about it. And here we go, here's the poster. So it is called Happy Birthday to Me, and as you can see, this dude is getting like impaled by a shish kebab, with like meat and vegetables on it, and it's like going through his mouth. It's one of the most famous scenes, and it's not really a spoiler because if you picked up the DVD or rented the movie, you'll see this image. So I'm not really spoiling anything. And anyway, the craziest part of the movie is the end. And there is a twist in the movie, so basically, when you see the end, you'll be like, what the hell's going on? I kind of like it because the story's interesting, and I've got to give my friend Teresa, my great friend who also likes Halloween, I'm so lucky, I've got two wonderful friends who are, like, obsessed with Halloween like me. Catherine's one of them, and my great friend Teresa's another. Unfortunately, Teresa moved to Boston a couple of years ago. We used to have, like, marathons in person where we would, like, watch movies together. So the first time I ever saw this movie, Happy Birthday to Me, she had it on VHS because she likes to collect VHSs, and I watched it at her apartment, which actually later became my apartment, not her same building, but I lived in her same complex years after she moved out of it with Paul. Me and him lived in that complex, so that's pretty funny that she used to live in that same complex as well, and that's where I watched Happy Birthday to Me. So I actually found this, because it's rare to find a good copy, I found this in England on Blu-ray, and it was region free, so I was able to buy it and play it in a DVD player here in the US, but yeah, it has all kinds of special features, and it was super hard to find. There was this awesome, like, video store in England, in London, and that's where I found this special edition DVD. Again, the highlight about this movie, of course, it's corny teenagers doing stupid stuff. That's not really the good part about it. It's the kills. One has to do with weightlifting, and, you know, I don't want to get into it too much. I don't want to ruin the kill, but it's really good. And absurd. Like, and I think the more absurd the kill, the better it is. Also, some of the acting's over the top, like Paul was watching it with me, and he was just laughing at some parts, but in a good way. But overall, I would say that the story at the end has a very, very good kind of mystery to it, and little twist and turns that you don't expect. So, because of that, even though it's corny, I think it kind of still stands out and shines because of the things you wouldn't think at the end that actually end up happening. And Kat says the image for Happy Birthday to Me is disturbing. It really is, but it's a good movie. Alright, so I also want to highlight, I actually watched, and I added these at the last minute, and these aren't in Nathaniel's book, but on Twitter I asked people, what should I watch and add to my list? I have some extra time to add some stuff. And Nathaniel actually recommended 2 out of the 3 movies here that you see on your screen. He recommended Hellfest to me and Haunt, and then I picked out on my own, actually no, I'm sorry, Nails suggested Hellhouse LLC to me. So these were all suggestions from good people that I know, one of whom is in the chat, as you guys know, Nails. So yes, Hellhouse LLC. I was thinking, I also watched another movie called Hellhouse without the LLC, which is disturbing. It's not really a horror movie. It's a documentary about, like, this religious group that puts on a haunted house, and it's really about, like, stuff, like, what would happen to you if you sinned and stuff. So it was a documentary, not a horror movie, and it was really creepy, but for different reasons. So you might be thinking, why are these 3 movies grouped together? Well, the 3 things that they all have in common, or the thing that they all have in common, is that they're all about haunted houses. Not the kind that you just see on your street in a neighborhood, the kind you would pay to go to. So I think it was a lot of fun. I loved these movies. They were all well done, and they were actually more recent picks. So, like, Hellfest and Haunt were all made and released recently, released in like 2018 to now. So very, very recent movies, both of them similar plots. Like, basically, the plot for both Hellfest and Haunt, a group of friends go into a haunted house or park, and there's a real killer in there, essentially. And they have to face real life horrors. But it did it so well, I really liked it, I gotta say. I mean, the concept, I guess, is gonna be something that's gonna be pretty repetitive, but I think that these movies did it pretty well. And Hellhouse LLC is more of like a found footage mixed with, okay, these people are putting on a haunted house, and something goes really wrong with it. So it's a found footage, but it's taking place in a, quote, haunted house, one that you would pay to get in. And it's basically like the people setting it up, and something crazy happens with them. So yes, and thank you so much, Nails, for Hellhouse LLC recommendation. I ended up really liking it a lot. Another similar movie that good guy Dave recommended to me was Grave Encounters. Now, that was also a found footage movie, and I do recommend that too. It wasn't really about, like, a haunt per se. It was more about, like, an old psych hospital, and they were filming a TV show about haunted places, and basically it's found footage, and I really liked Grave Encounters. I thought it was a good found footage movie, because sometimes they could be hit or miss, but both Hell House LLC was a good found footage, as was Grave Encounters. Thanks, Nails and Dave, for these suggestions, for sure. But again, guys, you can't go wrong with any of these three if you like haunted houses type of thing, the kind you go and basically pay admission to go to. Nail says she likes the lower budget stuff, to be honest, especially found footage too. Feels scarier, yeah, because it feels real, and it looks real. Alright, so let's go to our next little highlight here. Alright, so we talked a little bit about haunted houses. Here's 2 documentaries about haunted houses, and they're a lot of fun. So one is called Epic Home Haunts, and I just randomly threw it onto my marathon list this year. I had some extra time, like I said, and it's so funny. So these people, they spend all year decorating and planning. They can't have it up all year, but they basically do haunts that you could walk through in their yards. And there's a whole bunch of group of people who do it, lots of different families, and they're all in California in this one particular movie, Epic Home Haunts. So they even kind of network among each other, because there's so many people in California who do this outside of their homes that they created like a club, and they all get together and like, okay, how can we do like a little flickering bumblebee effect? And they have different like craft lessons and stuff. I think that's really neat. And I gotta say, it reminded me a lot of my mom and dad and me, because although we don't do a outside of our house haunt, we do basically our house, we do it up, and it takes us months. It takes us like 6-7 months to decorate our house for Halloween. Basically, after Christmas, my dad starts taking stuff down if we're going to have the party the next year, and he starts decorating for Halloween. And again, it's like floor to ceiling every inch. And these people reminded me of my family because they spend as much money as us, they spend as much time as us, and they're as obsessed about perfection as much as my family and I are about Halloween time. So it just reminded me, like, you know, they were even like kind of arguing amongst themselves and a little snippy about some of the stuff they were putting up, and it actually gave me some ideas. They were carving this giant foam pumpkin in Epic Home Haunts, and I want to do it. But it's so intricate. I looked up a YouTube video by the people in the movie making the pumpkins. It's difficult. It's like you gotta have giant blocks of foam and whatever. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but it'd be a lot of fun to try. And then the other documentary, it used to be on Netflix. I don't think it is anymore. But Nathaniel also put this in his Pumpkin Cinema book, but I didn't discover it through his book. I discovered it on Netflix like 5 years ago. It's called The American Scream, and it follows basically home haunters, people who decorate their house and outside their house as well. And specifically, so I basically end up every October, after watching this movie, I got inspired. There's a little girl in the movie. Her dad does a huge, big festive decoration in his house and outside his house every Halloween. And he ends up buying like a big mansion, and he ends up opening his own haunted house, like a real one. So it kind of shows his journey. He's one of the main people that they follow in American Scream. And the little girl in that family, she loves Halloween just like her dad, and she dresses up, like in the movie, you could see her being interviewed talking about how much she loves what her dad does, and she loves Halloween, and she's wearing thematic clothes, like Halloween shirts and Halloween tights, and she's using like a Halloween pencil. This is the movie, and that little girl inspired me to like wear Halloween clothes every day of the month of October. I saw her and I was like, oh my god, those are cool tights. And I was like, you know, who's to say that like only like little kids and grandmas can dress up for Halloween time? Like, I'm gonna find thematic clothing and basically wear it every day of October. And that's what I did. So that was all inspired by The American Scream. And let's see if I could find what our boy Nathaniel says about The American Scream, because he does write about it. Alright, Nathaniel says the synopsis is, it's from 2012, by the way, and the synopsis is, this documentary follows 3 families in Massachusetts who transform their houses into elaborate Halloween haunts every October, a painstaking ritual that takes an emotional and physical toll on them, but provides infinite joy when the big night approaches and the trick-or-treaters stop by. So again, it reminds me of my family, and that's why I wanted to highlight these documentaries, because if you want to know how much work goes into something like decorating your whole house or outside your house like these people do, and some of them do outside and inside, it's a massive amount of work. People don't realize it takes like all year long. My dad must have spent, I mean, I feel weird saying this out loud, but like, it has to be over $10,000. I mean, it has to be far past. He gets a lot of things on sale, but like over the last 5-6 years since he's been doing our party, maybe 7 years, It's gotta be up there. Like, I know it's over 10,000. And like our whole attic, they even talk about in Epic Home Haunts, they talk about where you store all of your stuff the rest of the year. Like our whole attic, luckily it's the same length as our house and you could stand up in it. It's a big attic. It's not like a crawl attic where it's just a crawl space. It's like huge. So that's where we put all our stuff, but we also bought a trailer like that we have in our backyard. That my dad says he bought it not just because of the Halloween. Like, oh, if we have a hurricane and need to evacuate, we could bring stuff with us in this trailer. I think it's partly because of the hurricanes, which does make sense. But I think it's mostly for the Halloween decorations that he puts in there. So that's pretty crazy. But yeah, check out both of those documentaries. Again, The American Scream, Epic Home Haunts. You'll love them. The American Scream, like the families, you could see that they're struggling a little bit. So it's almost like, I feel like it's kind of, I'm not saying it's not a wholesome look at the families, but I think that it's not just like a pure look at it I think they're kind of showing like, okay, these people might be a little too obsessed to where it's like kind of straining their emotional health and stuff, but at the same time there's a lot of happiness too. So it shows their struggles, but it also shows their successes and the joy that they bring not only their neighborhoods, but like lots of people that come to visit what they do from all over the world. And from all over the country, especially. And okay, I want to talk about this because everyone knows Linda Blair from The Exorcist. Of course, she played the little girl who got possessed, in the movie. And it's really creepy, really scary. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I didn't know, but she did this movie later in life where she's basically like an older adult. I think she's basically like a young adult when she plays this character. She's the main character in this movie called Hell Night. It is a little cheesy and corny, like a lot of movies on my list here, but it's got great kills. As you can see, someone gets kind of like decapitated here. You could see that on your screen. And you could see also the movie poster, that's Linda Blair basically screaming, trying to climb this fence. And here is my big thing about the movie. This is my one thing. So I like the movie. I do think there was some fun stuff in it, and I would recommend it, but I'm kind of disappointed because, so Linda Blair does this role, and I wanted her to be like a strong, final girl type of character, but basically all she does is scream the whole movie. She leaves like her friend behind at one point and doesn't try like hard enough to help him. I don't know, basically she's kind of bossy throughout the movie, and very kind of almost like conceited or prissy. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I just don't like the character she played. I kind of wish she was more strong, more sympathetic, and didn't scream the whole movie. Basically, she's like, oh, the poor maiden, help me, help me. That's my one big criticism. Overall, though, cool kills for sure. And again, another 80s movie that I think a lot of people might not have seen, but that is a lot of fun, and I think anybody would enjoy. Again, I would love to know if you guys watch it and have the same criticism as me, because yeah, that's my one thing I didn't like about it. Other than that, it was a lot of fun. All right, another set of movies I want to highlight. So I watched two movies that were not filmed in the 80s, but were set in the 80s. So these are more current films, but were like a homage, basically, to 80s movies. So there's The Summer of '84, which literally kind of reminds me of Stand By Me a little bit. And it's a group of kids hanging out. Also reminded me of Stranger Things a lot. I just didn't like the ending, but I think regardless of me not liking the very end, because it didn't fit with the rest of the movie, but I love the interactions between this group of friends. It's so 80s feeling. It's so well done. And like you feel like you are watching something that was filmed in the 80s because like a lot of the props and the clothes and the houses just look very 80s. Really good movie. I totally recommend it for sure. Very feel good, like it's not like super scary, but it's just very thematic in terms of 80s and 80s-ish style and all that. I loved it. Another movie that it doesn't take place in the 80s, but it's an homage to like 80s slasher movies, and basically it's like a group of people who get like sucked into this 80s slasher film and they get stuck in the film and they gotta try to get out of the film. And it's called Final Girls, and it's really a great story about strong final female characters, and I love it. It's also got a really strong story about a mother and a daughter and their journey, and it's very emotional actually. I thought it was heartfelt. I don't know, it kind of tore at my heartstrings a bit, but it was really fun too. So it also kind of made fun of the horror slasher tropes as well. So it has everything you could want if you like slasher films, a nice little homage to all of that. So guys, I give this my highest recommendation. Again, if I'm talking about these movies, it's either to make fun of it or to recommend it. So yeah, these I totally would say give it a watch, give it a chance. I think you'll like it. Nail says, to go back to the Hell Night thing, the movie with Linda Blair, she can't stand movies where the girls just scream. Come on. Like, in actuality, I think women would kick butt. And that's what, in Final Girls, like, a lot of the women in the movie are strong. They're kicking butt. And that's what I like about it. It's a really cool look at 80s slasher films and the whole idea of the, quote, final girl. Alright, here. This is one of the movies I'm going to make fun of, but I actually like, too. So it's like half make fun of, half like. It's called Magic, and as you guys can see on your screen, that guy might look familiar to you. That's because it's Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins before Silence of the Lambs. So this is when he's a lot younger, and it's a great movie. It kind of keeps you guessing the whole time. Is the dummy possessed, or is it all in Anthony Hopkins' mind? And that's not giving anything away. The whole movie, you're asking yourself this. And the first time I saw this was back in college, my freshman year, when I first started to get into horror movies, like, in an extreme way. My roommate and I would watch AMC's Fear Fest. I think it was called Monster Fest at the time. We watched it 24/7. We both had it on in each of our rooms, even when the doors were open. We'd be like, oh, you watching Halloween yet? What scene you're on? I remember watching Magic in between college classes. We had a few friends over between our classes, and everyone was like, what is this movie? It's so weird. I've got some notes here. So not only do we see Anthony Hopkins as a younger guy, we also see the actor who played Mickey from the Rocky movies. Of course, Mickey is the trainer of Rocky, and this is the first time I've seen him in a movie in a long, long time besides Rocky. I haven't seen him in a lot of other things. I've got to go back and watch older movies, that's for sure, because he's a famous actor. Like I said, the first time I saw it was on AMC, and it was awesome. And okay, this is, so there, it's kind of like they sell it as a love story. As you can see on this poster, it says a terrifying love story. So Anthony Hopkins' character has like a high school sweetheart that he goes back and sees, and he's kind of like in the midst of a mental breakdown because he can't handle like the level of fame he's getting, and he's getting a level of fame because he's getting so successful with his whole dummy act, his ventriloquist act, with this dummy called Fats. And okay, so there's a fun little part where it's almost like Exorcist-like, where the dummy turns his head fully around. I like that. And here's some more funny things from it. Okay, so there's this whole scene where he's trying to teach his love interest, the girl from high school, how to like read his mind, like telepathy. They're trying to do tricks with magic cards. And he's literally like yelling at her, screaming at her to sit down. Like she's begging him to try to teach her how to do telepathy and to do this card thing, this card trick. And he's like, you gotta concentrate. And it's like, if I were her, I would run for the hills because he's being so weird. He's sweating profusely, and there's this one part where, like, so they're getting the deck ready, about to do this whole card trick telepathy thing, and she says, should I think now? Should I think now? Should I think now? I'm gonna keep repeating it because it's absurd. Should I think? She's asking him if she should think, and he goes, yes, very hard. And, like, he says it very sternly. She should think now. And she goes, I'm frightened. And he's like, there's nothing to be frightened of. And he's like yelling, why is she frightened over a telepathy thing? What is her problem? Well, anyway, later they have a whole big fight because he reveals that he tricked her, and it's not, because she gets all excited. Eventually, she guesses what card he has, and she thinks like, oh, they've got a connection and stuff, and it was a whole bond. But later, they get in this big fight because he's like, it's a trick. What, did you think it was real? It's ridiculous. Anyway, she's actually married in the movie. And so he's like kind of her side piece, you could say. And she's noticing that he's being very disturbing with the doll. And he tells her, I'll leave the doll behind if you leave your husband. Like, yeah, that's a fair trade, dude. Come on. Like, there's all kinds of ridiculous stuff in this movie. Even her husband's ridiculous because the way he acts is not like how a normal husband would act, and I don't know. Anthony Hopkins is a little over the top in this movie, but I do think it is fun, and I think you'd enjoy it. But I do think that the woman and the love interest should be alarmed by his behavior. Like, come on, lady, this guy's not normal. And another thing is, she's so excited about his doll. So when he comes to visit her, basically she has like a bed and breakfast. He comes to visit her, she's like, oh my god, I've been seeing you everywhere on TV. It's the doll. And she like goes insane. Like, would anyone really be that excited about a ventriloquist doll? And like she's so impressed in the movie. But again, look out if you do watch it. Please tell me what you thought about the scene with the cards and the telepathy. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about when you get there, because she starts like getting all weird and he starts freaking out and yelling, and it's just grade A great. I love it. God, it's so good. Kat's saying she saw magic a long time ago and she remembers it being creepy. Of course, dummies are creepy in general. Again, like clowns, I do think dummies just have like an inherent creepiness to them. And I don't know why that is. I guess because it looks like they could just come to life right there, but then they're not alive. So we've highlighted some corny movies. Let's go to one more corny movie. I'm going to try to wrap it up quick here. Maximum Overdrive. This is a Stephen King movie. Not just a story, a movie, as in he directed this movie. It stars Emilio Estevez, and as you can see, this truck has a big face on it that looks like the Green Goblin. It's ridiculous. And basically all the cars and all the electronics come to life in this movie and have a mind of their own. And it's because of a comet. It's all very weird and convoluted, but it is hilarious, and it's even better than Magic because it's on the level of Troll 2. It's so bad it's good. Magic is creepy and actually is scary in some parts and has like an interesting story, whereas Maximum Overdrive, you'd probably just watch it for the laugh factor. So that's the big difference between those two. So we open up the movie, they say the music's all by AC/DC, which is very random, and it doesn't really fit. It's very strange. Again, directed by Stephen King, and I love Stephen King. Everyone knows me. Everyone here knows that I love Stephen King. Kat loves Stephen King as well. But again, it's just not his best work, and he's even said he was coked out of his mind during this movie. He's come out and admitted that. So that's why it has turned out so weird, but it's still a lot of fun to watch. So I think that the dialogue is very strange. It doesn't really match how people talk, and even like all the actors' accents is really bad. Like there's a gas station owner. He's supposed to be like Southern, but it's terrible accent. And I'm from the South, and trust me, it's bad. There's this drawbridge that has a mind of its own, and it's opening when there's cars in the middle of it, and they're showing like repetitive shots where you could see like stuff happening in slow-mo, and it's just cut together really poorly, but it's also like so exaggerated, all the cars falling through the drawbridge, that it makes it funny. It's so ridiculous. There's also a guy who gets sprayed in the eyes with gasoline, and the way he screams is so wonderful. He's like, oh! It's so wonderful. Also, basically, like, a carving knife that you would use to carve meat or turkey or whatever gets possessed or, like, has a mind of its own, like all the other electronics, and cuts this woman's arm so deeply within, like, a second. This carving knife would never cut her arm that much, okay? It's ridiculous. Also, spoiler alert, there's a steamroller that literally rolls over a kid, and it's hilarious, and it looks so fake, because, like, you can almost tell, like, it's a dummy. Then there's sodas shooting out at a group of kids out of a machine, and the coach like gets really, really, really hurt by the sodas. That was probably my favorite part, was the soda thing. It had a mind of its own, was attacking the kids with soda. Like I said, language isn't realistic in the movie, and there's other parts of the movie that look really bad, like a truck hits a mechanic and it's clearly like a dummy that you see like a second before it hits him. Also, there's a line, I think I just loaded my pants, like, crapped his pants. Like, that's ridiculous, okay? No one says, like, stuff like that. No one talks like that. Also, disproportionate explosions, which I love. Also, lots of slow-mo stuff happening when things explode, which I also like a lot. A dude at the truck stop, he owns the truck stop, he randomly owns a bazooka and tons of other military-grade weapons. How does this random guy, I guess he's a gun nut, I don't know, he owns a bazooka, and they use that. And of course, this one woman is like, we made the machines, it's our fault, and she starts spazzing out and freaking out and saying, I made them. Kat says this is the one Stephen King movie she's never seen. I guess watching it now would be more for a laugh than a scare. Yeah, like, you could watch it any time of year, and it would be applicable. It would kind of fit with, like, a summer theme, because it's very hot in the movie, and in fact, there's this one scene where they're filling up all the trucks because they don't want to get destroyed by the trucks, so they're doing the truck's bidding and filling all these machines up with gas, and, like, Emilio and the girl who he falls in love with, by the way, he falls in love with a girl in, like, 24 hours, not even, like 10 minutes they're falling in love, it's ridiculous. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. him and the girl are like filling up the gas, and they're doing it for a few hours, and then it shows them getting so tired, like they can't stand up, they can't walk. It's so absurd, it's like exaggerated. But yeah, I would recommend this movie like for a summer marathon or a summer movie. You don't have to watch it in October. There's really no like fall foliage. Oh my gosh, tongue twister. There's no fall like elements to it at all or anything like that, but it is a good horror movie in terms of laughing at it. It is a lot of fun. And there's some decent parts too. I do like the whole machine having a mind of their own type of idea. It's unique. There's a really cool part where there's like a demolition scene where everything in the gas station's like falling apart. I think that's the coolest part of the movie, and it must have cost a lot of money to make because like everything falls apart. I watched this movie with my dad this year and it was a lot of fun. He also laughed at it a lot, and yeah, it was ridiculous, but worth the watch. And actually, so I had two kind of like driving movies on my list this year. It was Race with the Devil, which was with Peter Fonda, I believe, and then Maximum Overdrive. So I did like a little like truck / driving movie theme with those two movies. I don't know why. My dad was actually the one who suggested me putting this on, and he says, if you haven't seen it, you've got to watch it. You'll love it, and you'll laugh your butt off. So yeah, thanks, Dad. I did laugh, and we had a good time watching it together, so. Alright, and then another movie I want to recommend, it's new, brand new. It's called The Mortuary Collection. Something crazy happens to a male body part. I don't want to give too much away. It's insane. They flip the whole sex in a horror movie thing on its head. Let's just say that. Like, bad consequences happen to the guy, not the girl, and I like that a lot. This movie was a lot of fun, well made, really cool art direction, really cool art design in general. Again, it was released recently in 2019. It was directed by Ryan Spindle, which I don't think he's done anything else that's been big. He's done a lot of shorts, but this was his first like movie. It's basically a collection of tales, like a horror anthology, but they all tie into a central story. So it's not just like an anthology, they all tie together into one big story. The main actor, the guy who works at the mortuary in the movie, that it's named Mortuary Collection, some of the story takes place at a mortuary. Clancy Brown is the guy who works there. And if you think his name sounds familiar, that's because he was in Shawshank Redemption as the prison guard. He was in Pet Sematary 2. He was even in Flubber, and I'm guessing he was a bad guy. The character's name he played was Smith in Flubber. I don't recognize him. And of course, he was in Lost, a pretty big part in Lost. So yeah, Clancy Brown's done a lot of work, and he's great, and he was great in the Mortuary Collection. I totally give it a recommendation. I think you guys will enjoy it. Scary, creepy, well done, very modern, but in a good way. Alright, let's see. Alright, most Halloweeny movies. Lady in White, Kenny and Company, and Hubie Halloween, which is on Netflix. Hubie Halloween, of course, is probably the most corny on the list, but I think it was wonderful in terms of the look and feel. These are the movies I picked out to point out to you guys, to maybe have you make a note of, because 2 out of the 3 are not very well known. Lady in White and Kenny and Company. Hubie is definitely kind of more well-known since it's a new movie. It was all over Netflix, but all of them are very, very thematic to fall time. Either they have Halloween imagery or fall imagery or all of the above. As you can see, Kenny and Company, the opening graphic is a pumpkin, and it was directed by the same director. His name's Don. He directed Phantasm and Phantasm 2 and all of the Phantasm movies. So randomly, he directed Phantasm, and even though this movie takes place partially on Halloween, it's more about like a kid growing up and like childhood and like kind of like some experiences in this little kid's life. It's hard to find, but you can find it for free on YouTube, and it's enjoyable as hell. This kid, the one thing I noticed is he's wearing the same shirt in a lot of scenes, and it's supposed to be like different days. So like, why is this kid wearing the same shirt? I don't think like the costume department kept a good eye on that. It was definitely low budget, but man, the Halloween imagery, basically the kids go trick-or-treating on Halloween night. Some of the movie takes place like when they're prepping for Halloween, so the kid's working on his costume. You see that. You see Halloween night where they sneak into a house. They're all dressed up. It's really, really, really thematic, really Halloween-y. Lady in White, amazing imagery. In fact, I just want to defer to what Nathaniel says because I found this from his book. In his intro, basically Nathan is giving his criteria for which movies he picked and why he included them in the book. He says, one of the hardest decisions I made was whether or not to include the 1988 supernatural horror fantasy Lady in White. On one hand, the first half hour is filled with some of the most enchanting Halloween imagery captured on film. Cemeteries, sidewalks buried underneath multiple layers of fall leaves, bowls of candy corn at the local candy shop, beams of sunshine peeking through the trees of flaming colors. A boy in a Dracula cape and mask riding a bike with a jack-o'-lantern in its basket, and by far the most festive-looking elementary school classroom ever. So it's no wonder why each student brought their costume to class and a pumpkin. Also, there's a very likable main character, a charming small town, and an interesting story. But after the first 30 minutes, it becomes hard to imagine a more appropriate movie for Halloween. But then again, after that, the movie's a real downer thanks to a significant chunk of time being dedicated to the civil rights struggle and a subplot where a janitor is wrongfully accused of murders of 11 children. So he's saying that like he wants to recommend kind of like not uplifting. He wants to recommend fun movies to watch on Halloween. And Lady in White, there is a kind of heavier second half, but I almost disagree with Nathan. I think this movie is perfect for Halloween, even with a longer running time, even with the second half looking at like, race relations and children getting preyed on and murdered. It doesn't do that in like too obscene of a way. It does it in a way where it's like it makes sense with the story, and it's a great movie. It's a great story. So to me, I love Lady in White, and the imagery, even if it goes away after the first 30 minutes, it's worth it. It's a good movie, and I would recommend it for sure. But you could watch it even in non-Halloween times, because it doesn't just take place on Halloween. Like he said, it's the first 30 minutes, and then it kind of like follows the kid after that. Nail said, it's always the janitor who is accused in horror movies. I know, right? That is pretty funny. I didn't even realize that, but yeah, it is always the janitor. What the hell's with that? And again, Hubie is ridiculous, but definitely thematic, so I would recommend it because of that. And finally, I want to end with Night of the Creeps, which is a well-known cult classic movie, but I had never seen it before. However, I learned about it from this great documentary, In Search of Darkness, where they talked about 80s horror movies and, how popular they were in the 80s and how the genre really exploded. And again, I had heard about this movie many times, but I was really convinced to watch it after seeing the documentary In Search of Darkness. And I'm glad I checked it out because it was a lot of fun, and I don't know, it had some cool effects in it, some cheesy stuff, some alien slugs, and some great, as you could see, like the girl and her zombie boyfriend, who's basically like infected with like alien slugs behind her. The famous quote from it, "I've got good news and bad news for you girls. The good news, your dates are here." The girl says, "What's the bad news?" "They're dead." So yeah, there's the famous line from that. And again, those are all my recommendations. I think those are films that it's definitely worth going out of your way to check out. If you haven't heard of them before, go look them up and determine for yourself if you want to watch them. But I do think you'll like them, especially if you like some corny stuff. Some of the corny ones you might only like if you like funny type of horror movies. But some of the other groups of movies I suggested that are more serious, I think they're good movies, and that's why I recommended them. So I totally like Mortuary Collection, Hellfest, Haunt, Hellhouse LLC. All those movies are good. I would say yes, definitely watch those for sure. Lots of good choices this Halloween. How will next year live up to this year? I don't know. It was so good this year. The marathon was a blast.